Rachel Warner. I'm our Director of Collections at the York County History Center. And today I brought out a selection of toys from the History Center's collections to share with you as a sneak peek that's special to our members. And I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you for being a member of the History Center and supporting what we do. We're really, really thankful to have you all, and we're sorry that we can't be in person, but we're hoping, at least we can share some things with you digitally. So the first piece we have here is actually one of the oldest toys in the collection, and you'll kind of see a progression with the toys from a lot of handmade and often wooden items to more mass-produced pieces. This particular one, this was donated to us. It was actually one of the first pieces that came into the History Center collection. It was donated by William Spate, but it was actually made by his great-grandfather Friedler in the early 1800s. So his great-grandfather actually immigrated here from Germany in 1818 with his family and children. So we know it's probably 1820s, maybe 1830s. But it's a really great piece. It's got a lot of details. This is something that would have been completely handmade, and it was passed down through that family, which was how William got it and then donated it to us. So a lot of these, they're very special pieces because just like toys today, a lot of times kids are very hard on them and they don't last. So it's pretty special to have a piece this old in our collection with still, in pretty good condition. There are some issues. At one time it would have had a really nice horsehair tail, but his tail's pretty sparse these days. Same with, you can see some wear to his ears and things, but there's definitely a lot of really nice details, especially to the paint. So our next piece is another wooden toy, another handmade toy. This is probably a little bit later time period, probably 1860s to maybe 1880s, right before mass-produced toys were really becoming more and more popular. It's definitely a nod to a Noah's Ark, but it's not necessarily an ark. It's actually a barn that was constructed for the animals. This particular grouping came to us from Titus Giese, and many of you may remember for a very long time there was a toy shop exhibit here at the History Center, and a lot of those toys were actually the Titus Giese collection. And Mr. Giese, he collected toys all from this region, from South Central Pennsylvania, and he donated a lot of really interesting pieces and very early ones to us. So I'll show you guys like this, where you can really see lots of neat details. It was all hand carved out of a single piece of wood and then painted. And then you have other ones like this cow or cattle with, he actually, the maker of this took a piece of leather to make the horns and to glue that, into the wooden cow block. The elephants also have little leather ears attached to the wooden block. That one's got a nice little elephant eye to them. So they're really great early pieces that have held up pretty well for their age. Alright, our next grouping, so now we're starting to get into the later 1800s. This was actually donated by the Dempole family, which is the very famous architects that created a lot of buildings, especially here in downtown York. And this piece would probably be like 1870s to 1880s. And it was a really nice set, actually, for, is it made to be as a gift for a child. And this particular lantern, this would have folded up, the sides would fold up, and it created this kind of look like a book sort of thing. And along the side, this was completely filled with slides on each side. And we have a few of them out here. But we're in the process of finishing a complete inventory of this building to move to the steam plant site. So we actually have taken those slides out in order to protect them and put them in some individually wrapped storage so that they'll make that journey to the new site. Magic lanterns, this would have been a really special toy. You have to think about the time period where it was before film. So to be able to tell a story and to see images projected on a wall would have been quite a treat for kids and adults. This particular lantern, this part would slide out, and there are often times the light source was either a candle or it would be an oil lamp in there with a wick. But they'd take the slide and then they'd load it into here and be able to project that image. And then someone would oftentimes make up a story about that particular set of images. So our next pieces are some handmade ornaments. These actually come to us from the Heathcote family, and many of you will know the Heathcote name. William Heathcote was the founder of Glenrock, and these ornaments were actually in his family, passed down. I don't think they were actually used by William, just by some details that are kind of specific to them. This one in particular, with the Santa. So the Santa image, the red and white Santa image, does appear from the 1870s on. It's becoming more and more popular. So it's that late Victorian period. But this one also has these little celluloid strands. And that sort of material actually didn't come about until the early 1900s. So we know this piece is just a little bit later than William's time period, but it probably was one of his children's, and it passed down through that family. Sometimes I get questions about the tinsel, what time period is the tinsel. Tinsel is actually a lot older than most people realize. It's been used since the 1600s actually, where it was actually silver threads at that time. But most of these are going to be late 1800s, early 1900s. And something like this angel, that could have been on a greeting card, and then that piece would have been cut out and turned into an ornament. So our next piece is actually from 1900, and this particular doll, it was purchased at Weis Store here in downtown York, and it was owned by Mrs. Mary Pierpont Cox, and it was given to her on her 5th birthday. And the clothing for it was actually made by Miss Lulu Ronicky Lewis, and we'll show you point out some details to you. Zoom in real close, you can actually see she has little porcelain teeth. And then with her outfit, it's a very intricate outfit. So you've got the first layer, the dress, and then there's actually several petticoats underneath, even some bloomers that were made for her, and then you even have knit socks and little leather boots that were also fashioned for this doll. So this would have been a pretty special doll, and it was donated to us in the 60s actually. But it's a nice piece that would have been sold locally with then some handmade clothing. Alright, we're going to move ahead to another piece here from the collection. I'm going to tilt it up so you can see it really nicely. So we talked a little bit about how the toys are going from handmade to more and more mass-produced. This piece we don't know exactly who it was made by, but there's some very similar ones from the McLaughlin brothers, who produced a lot of classic games and toys. This would have probably been late 1800s, maybe early 1900s as well. And I'll show you some interesting little details. So we've got our Santa, but then each of these blocks also has a backside, and it was actually an alphabet puzzle. And then you'd put them in a different order then to make the alphabet puzzle. And then you got even another bonus, was that along the sides there's actually these little toy soldiers that you could line up. So it's basically a 3 or 4-sided puzzle. You've got soldiers on both sides, and then the alphabet puzzle and your Santa Claus puzzle. So we see a lot of these similar toys are still made today with kind of those sort of puzzles. This particular set, it was actually donated to us by the Kindig family. So our next piece, I'll tilt this up so you can take a look at it. So this would have been a 1920s era piece. This particular one came from the Heisley family out of Dillsburg. And there's information that came with it that said it was only used at Christmas time. And it would have been, it belonged to Joseph Heisley, and we know it's earlier than 1926, which lines up with about the time period these were being made in the early 20s. So what it is actually a little record set, and all of these pieces condensed down into this box. It's actually a German-made toy. So this opens up, and I'll tilt it again so you can see the base where you set your record. You use this little key, and that's how you wind it up, and then you can start it. There's a little lever on the side to start it to play. But you put a record on there. These are just one-sided records. And these 3 actually, I think it says the book that sings, so they're stories. And we have Old Mother Hubbard, Good King Arthur, and the City Mouse and the Country Mouse. But this would be placed then on top. And then this little piece actually goes into the corner. You have your little speaker phone, and you got a needle there so that you could then place that down onto the record for it to play, and it would be spinning the record below it. So it's a pretty neat piece to still have intact with all of its pieces. There's even actually some extra needles for it. So it's an interesting early toy now from the 1920s. We're up to the 1920s. Our next piece, this is going to be familiar to many of you, but I bet a lot of you might not know that these sleds were made here in York. So this is an American Acme Co. sled. This one's probably from the 40s, 50s era. It was actually donated to us by the granddaughter of the founder of the company. Her name was Anna Koval. And the founder, his name was actually Caspar Owerman. He immigrated here to the United States from Germany in the early 1900s. I believe it was 1917. And he started American Toy Novelty Company. And by the 1920s, he actually merged his company with Acme Wagon Works. And in 1927, I think was the date when they started, or when they merged together, and they started producing lots of different types of furniture, and then of course these sleds. And there's a statistic that from in 1927 they actually produced 150,000 of these sleds. And each department store, they would tend to carry a different model at each different one. So this one's the rocket plane, but there were other names that, you know, many of you probably familiar having as a child. But a lot of people don't realize that that American Acme Co. is a company here from York County, and they're based out of Emmetsville. So, another piece. So our last toy, this is from 1982. Many of you are probably going to remember this game. It was produced by the York Area Chamber of Commerce, and it's called All About York Game. And it's kind of a version, a little bit of Monopoly, maybe a little bit of like, you know, Candy Lane. You're rolling dice and picking up cards, moving around the game board. So there's some interesting details about this game. If you kind of zoom into the board, one thing a lot of you might see that's missing is the Codorus Creek. But you've got lots of different businesses all across the city, and it was a great way for them to advertise their business, and also for people to just learn about what was downtown and what those different businesses do. So this is, you know, the Monopoly sort of money that they had. You can see there's different businesses on each one. There's the radio station. Fortunately, a lot of these might not be around anymore. The York Dispatch. And then you've got these travel cards. There's good old Hardee's. So, and then there was also what they called surprise cards. And I think these are kind of interesting. This one's for Robert A. Ben Scott Physical Therapy. After treatment, you feel like $1,000,000. Treat yourself to a night out. Advance to the Performing Arts Center. So that's what today is called the Appel Center, but then would have been the Performing Arts Center. And then this is one I think we can all relate to. Definitely if you live downtown or work downtown, but also just in the area with the road construction, lose one turn. So that is all we have for our different games and toys. And you kind of see everything now from the early 1800s to the 1970s. We have lots of other interesting pieces. I'm looking forward to being able to share those with you in future years. And thank you again for being members and for supporting the History Center. Have a very happy holiday season.